Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Coffee with Partners, our series of online interviews introducing some of the partners of the European Week of Regions and Cities. My name is Betty. I'm Social Media Officer at the European Committee of the Regions, and together with my colleague Manu from DG Regio, we invite EU Regions Week session organizers to tell us what they've prepared for this year over a cup of coffee. The 18th edition of EU Regions Week will be really special, as for the first time ever, it takes place fully virtually. And instead of 1 week, it will spread over 3 consecutive weeks in October, each in the name of one of the 3 key topics: empowering citizens, cohesion and cooperation, and Green Europe. The participants' registration is now open, so sign up by clicking the link in the description above. At the moment, I would like to warmly welcome in our studio our 3 first guests, representatives from the ESPON program, Piera Petruzzi from European Outreach, Zintis Hermanssons from Project Development and Coordination, and Sandra Di Biagio from Policy Analysis and Project Development. Welcome, and let's dive into the questions, Manu.
Yes, let's begin with the classic question to break the ice. Why does ESPON EGTC deserve a cup of coffee?
Thank you. Actually, I would say that in the past, some people used to call us EPSON, and we know exactly why. But our name is ESPON, and we are the European Territorial Observatory Network. And this year, I think we deserve not only 1 cup of coffee or tea or whatever your favorite drinks are, because we are partner of the European Week of Regions and Cities with 14 sessions, together with about 70 partners, institutions from all over Europe, and speakers. And the main aim is to support regions, cities, experts, but also scientists with our evidence tool and data on a number of relevant topics for the cohesion policies, such as aging population, macro-regional strategies, demographic change, quality of life, and so on, as you will see with my colleagues. If I can say something more about ESPON, it's an EU-funded program that provides data, analysis, scenarios, and tools to policymakers and stakeholders. We are active since 2002, and we cover all the EU member states plus 4 partner states. We are a kind of bridge between academia, science, and policy making to support policy making with evidence and fact.
Piera, why did you decide to participate in the EU Regions Week this year? You were there since the very first edition, if I'm not wrong. What do you expect from this year's edition?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. ESPON has been always present at European Week of Regions and Cities. In the past, it was called Open Days, actually. And this year is a special one due to the situation that we are all living. And this edition, which is fully digital one, is something we cannot miss with all our evidence and tools for supporting regions and cities in these special times with solution and policy observations for all of them.
And this year you are, as you said, organizing around 14 sessions. There are more than 70 partners you are working with. And for sure, you're one of the most involved and active partners, so offering such a diverse range of sessions. Could you give an example of some sessions? I don't know, Sandra, would you like to?
Good morning.
Wait a minute.
I'm dealing in particular with 3 of them, and I will just briefly introduce you to two, and then we have a special guest speaking about the third one. So we have a session on macro-regional strategies. I mean, macro-regions, as we know, are a very important instrument for territorial cooperation. And we set up a project together with the different macro-regions in Europe and also with REGIO to build up a monitoring system to support the observation of trends and the territorial developments in the 4 macro-regions. So now this tool is finalized, and we'll be very glad to show it and to discuss it with you. So it's aimed at the main governance bodies of the different macro regions, but other policy makers in Europe. And then we have another session on quality of life. I mean, quality of life in the times of Corona is also a very important aspect. And we are developing a methodology to measure quality of life at subnational level, based, of course, on the work that Eurostat and OECD has already done. So we are implementing different case studies, I mean, at different geographical levels, and we try to come with best practices and also to select indicators to measure quality of life, not only traditional statistical indicators, but also subjective indicators based on the user-centered approach. So each territory will be able to select and to decide about the most adequate indicators to measure quality of life. And then we have another session on sparsely populated areas. But maybe we have a special guest that maybe...
Yes, indeed. We have a special guest. Let me welcome Mr. Erik Glersen,
yes.
expert on territorial specificities and soft cooperation from Spatial Foresight. Good morning, Erik.
Good morning. Thank you. Yes, we do have a special session on sparsely populated areas. First of all, what are we really talking about? Well, we're talking about local communities across Europe that fall below these critical population thresholds to maintain these very important public and private services that make local communities function. And secondly, to have a functioning labor market with a sufficient mass, with sufficient diversity for young people to find a job, for companies to be able to find the staff they need. So all these issues that make it difficult communities to function on the medium to long term. This is not about local communities taken individually. It's about taking them in their functional context, so within the daily living areas of their inhabitants. Why is this really important these days? Well, first, because millions of people are affected. Not only do we have currently 2.4 million sparsely persons living in the sparsely populated parts of Sweden, Finland, Norway, these northernmost areas, which have been known to be very sparsely populated areas for a long time. But currently in ESPON, we have identified areas at risk of falling below these thresholds in countries such as Romania, 3.3 million people living in areas at risk, 1.5 million people in Spain, 900,000 in France, 700,000 in Greece. So significant numbers of people in risk areas that have to adapt to a new situation with falling population levels falling below these thresholds. Second big issue is because closing down these areas has significant implications on the long term for Europe as a whole. It's about preserving biodiversity as open fields are replaced by bushes and forests. These are resources that are lost forever if we let them close down. It's about possibilities for developing more extensive, more eco-friendly types of agriculture. It's about leisure areas that may be lost. We talk a lot about over-tourism across Europe. Maybe we need to rethink our tourism. These areas get lost if there are no one living there. It's also about access to resources that can become important in the years to come. I think about biomass, I find about wind, solar energy, forestry, grazing areas. All of these are important resources which may go lost. So what we're going to discuss at the event during the European Week of Regions and Cities is how we can best support these areas in thinking their own development in a context where maybe their concerns are not part of the European mainstream. So what kind of structures could we put in place, give them the capacity? These are small, isolated communities with limited own resources. How could they be given the resources to make use of the European Regional Development Fund programs or European Social Fund programs? How can they come together and share good practices? We know some countries have had sparsely populated areas for a long time. Some are discovering them. There is a huge potential for bringing them together. And lastly, we'd like to discover how to bring the dialogue with the sectoral authorities at the right level. How can sparsely populated areas talk to transport, talk to telecommunications, talk to service delivery in health or education at the right level so that they can get their specific concerns covered by sectoral policies? So I hope to see a lot of people coming to this interesting event on the 13th of October during the European Week of Regional Cities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glersen. And yes, as you just said, the appointment is on the 13th of October, where you will be able to bring forward the conversation on this democratic topic. And so thank you for joining us. Now I will ask you to leave and see you there on the 13th. And I was wondering, do we have another session on which you want to shed a light on Zintis?
Thank you, Manu, Betty. Yes, we do have other sessions, and I have a pleasure to introduce a session on data-driven analysis of urbanization, which will happen on 15th of October. And this workshop is really for those who are in data analysis, data crunching, especially concerning cities and their functional areas. This workshop will give an overview on where to get data and how to analyze it using different online web tools. It will feature speakers from DG REGIO Joint Research Center, OECD, and also there will be a researcher representing the ESPON for a project who is also dealing with this topic. And I think it's unique in a sense that it will not only give a European perspective, but also, let's say, a global feeling, because speakers will also address cities at the global level. So it's interesting for those who want to compare their cities with other global cities around the world. And lastly, this will also be an occasion to publicly present recently finalized ESPON for a web tool, which allows to estimate data at different functional areas, including functional urban areas. And we have another workshop on territorial impacts of natural disasters. And here we also have a special guest, and I hand over to you, Manu, to introduce our guest.
Yes, indeed. We have another outsider joining us today. Welcome to Efren Feliut, Climate Change Manager from Technalia Research and Innovation. He's one of the moderators of this session. Welcome, Efren.
Thank you very much. I'm really glad to share with you the content of our session.
But why this topic is important for regions and cities?
Well, during the last years, we are noticing that economic impacts related to natural hazards are increasing considerably. Of course, in a context of climate change, in which these direct and economic and indirect economic impacts have to be better analyzed and understand. Being like that, well, the intention behind this project and the session is, well, sharing how can we improve that knowledge about the territorial pattern behind the economic impacts of natural hazards, and also having a better understanding of the territorial vulnerability factors which could be behind those territorial patterns.
And which kind of natural hazards pose the biggest threat to the local and regional economy?
In our project, given the importance of these hazards and also quite dependent on data availability, we are going to be currently analyzing fluvial flooding, storms, drought, landslides, and earthquakes. Those would be the main 5 hazards which are analyzed and which have important economic impacts in Europe.
Okay, and what can we expect to hear in this workshop you are having?
Well, firstly, to have a summary or an overview of those territorial patterns that I was talking about before. So the territorial patterns of the natural hazards themselves, the related economic impacts, and also the territorial vulnerability factors which are behind, in order to understand how those 3 elements, the hazards, the economic impacts, and the vulnerability factors relate to each other. Secondly, we will have also a presentation of preliminary policy recommendations for an improved integrated territorial development, which correctly articulates climate change adaptation and disaster risk management policies in order to overcome and reduce the economic impacts of natural hazards. We will have also feedback and some insights from Netherlands and Italy related to lessons learned in policy development and policy implementation for specific hazards. In the case of the Netherlands, with a long trajectory in flood management, and in the case of Italy, with very interesting approaches related to landslides, for example. And of course, we will have an open discussion among presenters, the cases, and also other people involved in the session, in order to have cross-fertilization and feedback to the project and to this team.
Okay, thank you for your answer, and see you on the 14th of October at the
Thank you very much.
At the Horizons Week. Thank you, Efren. Then we arrive at the very final question, more on a personal level, on the personal motivation. What do you motivates you to work with these topics? Who wants to go first?
I can.
Piera, please.
I'm also working on targeted analysis, and one of them is ACPA, and it's about aging population in cities and how cities react to their aging population with new strategies, with new tools, and so on. And for this reason, I also would like to promote my session, which is older persons as local agents of changes. And this is on the 6th of October, together with Age Platform Europe and other institutions. So what really motivates me, apart from this special topic on aging population, which is something that all of us will face in our life, it's also that in these times of misinformation and fake news, somehow with ESPON, we are able to create solid arguments with data, with evidence, and so we can help policy makers at all levels to make decisions based on fact and not on fake news. So this is my biggest motivation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sandra Zintis.
Yes. You know, to be honest with you, these are really not the only topics I work on. But I think the common theme is data analysis, methodology development, map making, and so on. And I guess I'm interested in evidence-based policy making. So I'm interested to see how evidence is generated and used in policy making. I mean, it's not a secret that not always it's easy to establish a link But at least here at ESPON, we have an opportunity to make things happen and really bring closer policymakers at different territorial levels to the evidence we generate.
Thank you, Zintis. Sandra. Just a moment.
In the perspective of territorial cooperation, and Europe, I mean, has a solidarity between regions and cities and countries. I mean, the ESPON topics are really very relevant. And what my colleagues said, the fact that ESPON is aimed at provide evidence for policy making. So not only with scientific results, but also the interpretation of these results in the light of policy objectives. And I mean, the examples I gave you with the macro-regional tool and also with the quality of life is really to try to get the information to be used on the ground at different levels. So by cities, by regions, by local authorities, and also to coordinate and to motivate the dialogue between the different levels of governance, which sometimes, as Eric mentioned, in relation to the sparsely populated areas, it's not so easy to dialogue between different levels of governance and to coordinate the policies decided at different levels. So I think this aspect is very important in relation to our results and to the projects that we are carrying out.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you. And before passing the floor to Betty for the final remarks, I think there is one of the outsiders that is coming back, Eric, for a final remark.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a word on what excites me now in ESPON, and this is about what I call people-centered evidence, that we now are capable of producing new type of evidence, which is not the regional average, where you say, oh, the average between the city center and the countryside seems quite okay, so things must be quite okay. Well, they're not, because some people are exposed to specific challenges. We know now how to produce such people-centered evidence. And I think that's something exciting we can discuss also during the European Week of Regional Cities. How do we make evidence that actually reflects how people perceive their own environment? So I would like to get back to that during the event of October 13th, of how to actually make evidence where people can recognize their own situation.
Thank you, Eric. Now over to you, Betty, for the final remarks. And let me thank, on personal notes, all the speakers of today, Efren, Eric, Sandra, Piera, and Zintis. Over to you, Betty.
Thank you, Manu. And thank you to all of our amazing guests. This has been truly a very, very interesting and very inspiring conversation. I would also like to thank to all of our viewers on social media for their attention. And I would like to also remind them to register for our first fully virtual EU Regions Week in October by using the link that is in our post above the video. Stay up to date by following the COR and DG Regio on social media, and feel free to join the EU Regions Week community on LinkedIn for even more insights. For the time being, I wish you a great day, a great rest of the week, and we will see you next week with more episodes of Coffee with Partners.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.